good afternoon, good evening, depending upon exactly where you are in the world. Welcome. I will ask our panelists, who I will introduce you to in a moment, to hit their video screens and their unmute buttons so they can now join us. And there they are. How lovely to see them all. I'm aware we're welcoming parents and consultants and staff from schools from all over the world. I know we have attendees from Greece, from Romania, from Uruguay, Spain, UAE, Brazil, Italy, Hong Kong, all over the world. Thank you to those of you who've got up early and those of you who have stayed up a little bit later to join us. You are very welcome. I'm Jimmy Beale from the English Education, and I'd like to welcome you to this English Education webinar, when we'll be looking at the provision for international boys and girls at our great UK boarding schools. This comes at a time when pupils are just back to school after a holiday, and before that, for many of them, disrupted periods of education under lockdown. Having a daughter myself in year 10, I know how important it is for her to be back at school right now, back in front of her teachers and her friends. And I know now that more than ever before, I think, we appreciate as adults the role that schools are having in making our children better and happier people. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. Bar the panelists, you can hopefully all see and hear us, but we can't see and hear you. You are more than welcome to ask questions throughout. You'll find a question and answer panel on your screens, and John Milne, my colleague, will facilitate those questions and send them through to me. We will have time at the end of the session to answer those questions. If we don't have time for all of the questions, I will respond to them separately. This webinar is being recorded, and you will be sent a copy at the end of the session automatically. So now to our panel. This is our fourth webinar. Previous sessions have involved very senior teachers, head teachers from our member schools. Today we hear from the pupils themselves. I'm really looking forward to hearing what life is really like in a school. As a former headmaster myself, I know how often I had to stay on message, but today I know you'll enjoy a really open and hopefully candid discussion, and we can find out exactly how our panelists have settled and have grown at their respective schools. So, welcome to Kush from Bede School, to Illy from Oakham School, and from Tassilo from Bryanston School, all in the upper sixth, all in their last term. They will explain more about how long they've been over here in the UK, possibly where they were at school before they moved. I would like to say, of course, that they are working really hard at the moment for their final examinations, their IBs or A-levels, whatever they're doing. But I know that there has been huge disruption due to COVID. I'm sure we'll find out what they are doing, how hard they are working, and what they plan on doing when they have left school in just a few months. I know that all of them, to degrees, have been at home. I think everything has been disrupted since September and December. Periods at home, lockdown lessons, working on Teams and Google Meets. So I know it's been a tough time. I'm sure they are really chuffed to be back with us. So I am going to ask the first question. And my first question is, how did you find it to settle into your new school when you arrived? Basically, were you prepared for things, or was it a bit of a shock? I'm going to open that. I'm going to go to Tassilo first, please. Just share your thoughts with us, and then we'll ask the others as well. Welcome, Tassilo.
Hi, I'm Tassilo. First of all, I'm 17 years old and I come from Germany. I joined Bryanston in sixth form and just finished my IB due to the non-exam route. And Bryanston is, just for your information, a co-educational independent school founded in 1923. So it's a very young school for boarding schools. And just like you, I also went through a school agency and looked through 4 different schools in England and decided to join Bryanston. And regarding the question, to be honest, it wasn't that difficult as some would like to say or think. For me, the biggest thing was to understand the rules, and that means the habits of how the school works, how the people behave. And once you understand that, it is quite easy. And for example, understanding the unsaid rules. So for example, how people are, what clothes they are wearing, is a big thing, for example. And once you understand that, it's quite easy to settle into school. Then also there's the tutor, and he or she is always there. So if you have any problems or anything, the tutor can always help you. But so is the housemaster and your friends as well, obviously. The relationship between tutors with housemasters is always really good. And then you've also got a matron, which kind of the mum of the house. And she also always helps you. In Bryanston, we had an induction week, which means I was here for a week of school after my IGCSEs. And that kind of gave me a vague idea of the school's environment, how the school worked, and also where I was. Because it is a big change going from 200 students in Germany to a school of over 600 students with massive grounds. So you do get lost quite a lot at the start. And there is also a culture change. So for example, from Germany to England by itself, and then from, as I said, from a school in Germany to a massive, school and charity system.
It's great and a super answer, Tasli. I think one of the really interesting things you said there, perhaps the others could pick up on, is this learning from your friends and that initial probably great worry, am I doing the right thing in my new school with all the culture shock? And I know, having been at Bryanston myself, that there's a different attitude towards uniform there, in that you do not have uniform, but there is probably a bit of a uniform within the being a non-uniform. Yeah. So you get used to all of that, I'm sure. Maybe Kush, you could follow on your thoughts. How was your induction? It was a wee while ago, because you joined in year 9, didn't you?
Yeah, I joined in year 9, yeah. So first of all, I'd just like to say hello, everyone. I'm Kush from Beat School. Yeah, so I joined in year 9. Obviously, I was quite young back then. It wasn't, I was expecting it to be a lot more complicated, since it's just a different country, different culture, different school. I didn't know, I hadn't been away from home like ever back then. But yeah, so I was pretty nervous when I came. But however, when I actually arrived, and just receiving all the warmth from the matrons, from the housemasters, from all the kids, I mean, actually felt like I actually belonged here in the house. Currently, there are like 5 different houses in the school. I'm in one of the biggest boarding school house, Stud. So as soon as I arrived, the housemaster greeted me, and I just knew that I actually belonged here. I looked at the courses before I came back, before I actually arrived. So it's actually it was a pretty easy transition for me to adapt to the new country, the new culture, the new school, compared to what I come from. Yeah, so now it's almost been 4 years now, so I'm a house prefect as well. It's been a long journey since year 9, but yeah, I would just like to say that it's not as complicated or harm as it could seem to be, coming from a different country to England. The school.
I think, that's a super response, and that I hope, Kush, will put you in good stead as you make new changes, because it'll be the same trepidation as you move towards university and you move towards the world of work. It's about how you deal with it. What I really liked there in your answer was the fact that you felt that you belonged. Ilian, anything about that belonging bit when you started at Oakham?
I think the whole concept of being in a boarding school, when you arrive, it's quite daunting, because you're constantly surrounded by people. which you're obviously not used to when you go to a day school where you previously came from. And I think, like I said, it can be daunting, but once you get used to it, it feels weird not being around those people. So, you know, due to COVID, I had to spend a lot of time away from school, and you start to miss constantly being, you know, surrounded by people. And you do feel like you belong, because everybody there, or everybody at Oakham, really makes you feel like they've known you for the past few years.
Who would have been in, I think Kush has probably touched on it. You said housemaster. Tassilo, you said tutor, and I know tutor at Bryanston is a very important thing. Who would it have been for you, Illy? That first person who you connected with?
It's quite, I'd say there wasn't necessarily that first person. I'd say like the support system that we have in house is you have your tutor, you have your matron, your house mistress, but it's also the people you live with. Like there's this very good attitude around including people when they're new. So it's also the girls, or well, the boys, if you're a boy, that you live with that make a really good impression.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and you know, I'm delighted that the transition for you all was an easy one, because that transition, if you're happy, you are then able to do the other stuff well, aren't you? Academics. How did you find that transition with the academics, the academic expectation from systems you'd had at home? And how was it when you arrived at your new school? And I'm thinking of sort of styles of teaching, learning. Was it terribly different? Or, and if it was, how did you cope with that difference? Kush, would you kick off with that one, please?
Yeah, sure. So when I arrived, obviously I had done my research of what the course is going to be like. It was, not to be too cliche, but it was actually quite easy for me. It wasn't as bad. And as you know, others have mentioned that you have your support system, like, because in my previous school there weren't any tutors, housemasters that could actually support you in that manner. But when I arrived here, I met my tutor, and you know, I was explained everything, how it's going to be. So obviously I felt really comfortable with the course I was, you know, opting for. Moreover, I mean, obviously as you go forward, it becomes harder. But initially in year 9, I'd more stated as like a taster session for your upcoming higher years, because you come into beat, you choose your carousels with like a variety of subjects. I mean, even if they're not like interrelated somehow, you could have like legat, like dancing. You could have it combined with business or something else. So you can have like a whole variety. You can get taste from year 9, and then you can, you know, move forward to lower 5th and upper 5th, where you do GCSE with like a set mode that I want to excel in these subjects.
What subjects are you doing now? Because you're doing A levels. I'm
doing A levels, so I'm currently doing economics, maths, and double BTEC business.
Okay, and how's the BTEC? The BTEC's an interesting course and a slightly different course. You're enjoying that?
Yeah, it's a whole different course than A level, because there are like lots of coursework.
Yeah.
There aren't as many exams, but it's the same qualification, but it's just a different way of delivering the information and how you actually use it.
Brilliant. Illy, what about you at Oakham and that academic transition?
So Oakham offers both A levels and IB. My whole school career was basically, I did PYP and then MYP, so I do the IB system. I think we all know that the IB system is quite vigorous, but the way Oakham handles it is they have a lot of people to support you, IB coordinators, and their experience really just reassures you that you will manage to complete, you know, the program, which, I mean, for a course like the IB, that reassurance is quite helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it's an intensive, and Tassilo, you're also doing the IB.
Correct, yeah.
How did it change, and what were you doing before you came across? Were you also doing middle years program or something completely different?
So I was doing the IGCSEs,
Okay.
and for me, the biggest difference in academic expectations was that I didn't have a mum or a dad behind me who were always telling me to work. And it's definitely also prepared me for university later on, because we have prep nights. So every night you have to work between 7:30 and 9, and sometimes 7:30 and 10 o'clock. And it forces you to work. And I would have never at home worked at night. And then in Bryanston specifically, we've got correction periods, which means you've got one-on-one with a teacher every week, 35 minutes, which is intense, and you get a lot of work done there. And it's basically just, if you don't understand anything, you can ask the teacher. If you want to further develop your knowledge, you can ask the teacher. And those correction periods definitely helped me off at the start a lot, because I was off to a rocky start with all the new changes and everything. And yeah.
Kush, you talked of the sort of the move from year 9 up to now the upper 6th, and Tassilo's just alluded to it there. This concept of independence. How, because now you are, one hopes, ready for the world of either work or university, whatever you're going to. How has that happened? How have you found those steps towards academic independence?
Yeah. So after excelling from year 9, it obviously your studies do advance a lot. Yeah. So I think my schedule is a little bit similar to Bryanston, because we do have prep nights over here as well. But it's like, so 4:30 the school ends, and it's from 5:30 to 6:30 that you have to do your prep, and then you go for your dinner, you take some rest, you come back, you have one more hour again, and then you have further activities to do. But I think when you arrive in sixth form, you do realize that even though you have a limited amount of subjects, you have to spend a lot more time working on them, especially like A-level maths. You have to keep practicing, and then you have to have like a proper schedule where you can revise and further expand your knowledge, because you have constant term tests going on. Like every half term there's a test, and then there's an exam towards the end of the term.
All of that, you know, and I guess, and I'm sure, Illy, it's the same for you as well. I think what I'm alluding to not very well is this thing. You might have preps. All of you will be doing 2 or 3 hours prep a night. But at what point you could, if you wanted to, put your feet up, get the iPad out, you're in your own studies, I'm sure, and watch Netflix. And you're allowed to do that if you've got your work done. Who is the person who would, in your sixth form years, make sure or monitor actually that things are going well? Because I'm sure you're all straight A, exemplary students, wonderful. But it's not always that straightforward, and sometimes you need a bit of a push as well. Illy, who would that be for you?
I think, yeah, like you said, you do definitely need a push sometimes. We have our tutors which are responsible for our academics, not just our academics, but they help you a lot with that, and you meet with them quite often. And we also have, during prep time, we have people on duty in the house. So that could be either your resident tutors, which are other people that work around the school who live in the house, or it could be teachers that are in Rushbrooks, or your house mistress, and they have different duty nights, and they're in charge of just kind of checking on if you're doing your prep. But I think in sixth form there is kind of a aspect of self-initiative and being able to know, I mean, I need to do my prep tonight. Maybe I don't need to stop at 9. I need to work an hour longer. And I think that's the freedom you get from being in sixth form, is you take control of what work you need to do when you need to do it.
There you go. I mean, that's a super answer, and I hope it's, yeah, I can see the others nodding. One tricky question, no, not tricky, a straight question. Sometimes learning in other environments is much more about learning of knowledge. I would suggest that both A-levels and IB and BTEC ask you to ask why. a little bit more than maybe you did at home, depending on where you came from. But I know that some of your your friends at school will come from cultures where it was sit down, learn this, and regurgitate it for exams. Has anybody got any comment about that and how that is different over here? Illy, you were nodding vigorously.
I think, well, for the IB, it's not really, you know, you learn this, you read the textbook, and this is what you're going to do in your exam. It's more, it's quite interactive. I know it's weird to say you kind of interact with the subject or with the topic, but that's what you do. Is you don't just like revise from a book and whatever you revise, that is in your exam. I mean, there's not really a better way to describe it, but I'm not really sure how it is with A levels, but you kind of, you work together, you work with your teachers, you work with other students, and that's how you learn your subjects or your topics.
Absolutely. Kush, you're doing a couple of A levels?
Yeah. So I'll just explain A levels as completely different to IB, what I've heard so far. So A levels, I think, a lot more straightforward and constricting. So it's like you've been given a book, you've been given the revision material, and you've been said that okay, Kush, so you have a test next week, and this is your material, this is what's going to be in the exam, so please revise for it. So it's a lot more constricting.
Yeah, and it is absolutely right for some, and the IB is absolutely right for others. And I think that's the key. And to all the parents out there who would be saying, well, I don't know yet what is right for my son or my daughter, one of them will be. And it's about being guided towards the right route. And I'm sure that as you joined the schools, Tassilo and Illy, the school had some element in helping you decide whether you did IB or A levels. Is that right,
Yeah.
Tassilo? Or were you always going to go down the IB route?
So for me, it was quite clear because my sisters did IB as well. Okay. And I kind of got pushed into it a bit. But on the other hand, I think IB is great for students who don't exactly know what they want to do for the future, because it does give you have 6 different subjects plus TOK, Annex and Essay, which are like subjects by itself again. And so it does give you a broader range of subjects and choices to do in the future. And for example, I always thought I was going to go through down the economics route, but now that I've chosen economics and IB, I can say I'm not doing that. So yeah.
Well, that's a perfect way. Yeah. And for those of you unaware, TOK, some people are really stimulated by that extra element of the IB, the theory of knowledge, and that is basically learning how you learn. Really, really interesting. Okay, we're going to move outside of the classroom. How busy are you outside of the classroom? What new activities have you been introduced to? Illy, would you kick off on that one, please?
Okay, so Oakham, and I'm sure, I mean, both other schools here, they offer extracurricular activities. So these extracurricular activities could either be something new, or they do offer like continuation. So things that people did previously in their schools. What is really nice is for international students, often it's quite different because you see a lot of English things offered. So I'm Greek and German, but I live in Malawi. So seeing the things that Oakham offered, some things were quite new, and it's quite interesting to see that you can really engulf yourself in kind of like the English lifestyle. Because I mean, that's something you sign up for when you choose to do your, go to school in the UK. Just a bit of a insight, Oakham gives you the option to do things like DOV, MUN. They give a lot of time to do extra work, so extra math help, German help if that's what you need. And there's always a lot of sport on offer. One good thing about Oakham, and one of the reasons I love it, is because sport is quite a big thing. Whether you sign up for sport or whether you want to go outside and play tennis just for fun, that's quite a big part of our daily life, especially when the sun's shining like it is now. So
which is rare.
Yeah.
But when it does, you've got to celebrate and get outside. What would be the one thing, Illy, that you have done in terms of extracurricular that you wouldn't have done if you have stayed at home?
Oh, so I think one thing that Oakham let me do was to let me finish my DOV. So
Okay.
I finished my DOV. I'm now a DOV Gold, and that is
Congratulations.
thank you. That is something that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to do back home because it would have. I wasn't necessarily old enough to do the program back home. So that's something that Oakham let me do. It's not necessarily new, but it allowed me to finish.
It's a great thing that will hold you in super stead for the rest of your life, because there aren't many who do. And yeah, big congratulations to you. Tassilo, outside of the classroom.
Yeah, so I'd say, I think in every school, everyone is quite busy outside of the classroom. I mean, obviously there are the ECAs, and for example, speaking for Bryanston, and I think every school, there is such a wide variety. I mean, you go from clay pigeon shooting to fencing, and then I joined on Tuesday Empowering Women as an ECA as well. And so there is always something to do, and then obviously you've got the sports as well that you have to do, and every term there is a different sport in the spotlight. So for example, first term you've got rugby and rowing as one of the biggest sports, and then in the third term you've got tennis and athletics. But then you've also got these different sports like fives or squash or swimming that, for example, I personally would have never done. I mean, I know I've done over, I think 7 different sports in my 2 years here, which I've never done at home. And then obviously there are so many other activities you can do in your free time. I mean, the amount of games we as friends have invented just by being outside, and especially in summer term now, we're literally taking every single minute we can to go out to the lawn, play football, tennis, anything you can come up with, go to the skate park, anything. So yeah.
Right, that's wonderful, and I'm sorry, just for a short while, I'm keeping you from the skate park. Kush.
Yeah, it's a lot similar to the other schools as well over here. So as soon as you finish your school, you have a whole variety of activities you can do. Obviously, you have the basics. You'll have the basketball, football, swimming, squash. But then what really did surprise me when I arrived here was there were like a lots of other niche activities that like not many people go to, but then they're still there as like for like a unique talent you could actually opt for. So there's like wine making, there's like jewelry making, cooking. There's all those things. Like even if there's not even if there's students who are not big on sports, they can definitely have they still have a lot of options that they can opt for. And being like a sixth form student, I obviously have a lot more studying to do. So Beats also allows me to have extra sessions with my teachers. So you just kind of email them, and then you just have that extra hour in the evening whenever you want. Yeah, I think that's about it.
And if there were one thing, Kush, I asked Illy, and actually Tassilo told us himself that he'd been helping empower women, and that was his unique thing. What about you, Kush? What one thing have you done that you might not have done otherwise?
I don't know actually. Well, I wouldn't have gone to a primary school and taught a bunch of kids about different countries. Yeah,
Well,
there's a primary school down the road that we go to every year as a group, and we give them a lesson about different countries, different culture, where since it's an international school, everyone has a lot to contribute to it. So, I mean, it's actually quite fun engaging with those little kids and teaching them something valuable.
So are you now going to be a teacher?
I mean, I'm more towards the economic side. So
So you need to answer the question.
I'll take that.
I'm sure you'd make a very good one. What have been the best things about boarding? It's a big, open, general question. What have been the best things about boarding? I'm going to ask that of Tassilo first, please.
I think that's one of the most difficult questions you can ask somebody, especially in sixth form, because there's so many different things that make boarding so fun. I mean, I guess for everyone, it's constantly being around your friends, but then also having that level of independence. And I guess also from a different point of perspective, it does make you more mature because you do have to work by yourself, and it generally does. And one thing I did realize is when being home, I do really enjoy just being on my sofa and watching TV, maybe opening a beer. But then on the other side, you do actually really miss being in school and miss being around your friends and constantly thriving. And yeah, and I think in Bryanston particularly, I think the best thing about boarding was A3 Festival. And in Bryanston, you have a weekend, so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, where only the A3s, which is year 12, and they basically organize a whole festival in school. And so we had over 5 different plays. I did, for example, Pirates of the Caribbean, and then you've got a fashion show, and then you've got everyone dresses up, and as a house we went as like the Connaught Cones, and other people come as Mario and Luigi, for example. And so that was amazing. I think also the creativity in especially in Bryanston, I think.
Well, it's fantastic. And that A3 experience you've had, stays with you for the rest of your life. And I can remember my own A3 experience being in a drama festival and being a German, funny enough, prisoner of war in a farce by Philip King called See How They Run. I was called Max, and I'm sure my accent was appalling. Illy.
I think something about boarding school is that you live in a completely different country. So that for me, being an international student who already doesn't live in the country where I'm from, living in the UK is quite different. It also allows you to, I mean, you're apart from your family, you're apart from your siblings, and that can be quite scary, but there is, like Tassilo said, there is a level of independence. I think something that's amazing about Oakham and makes it quite special is that we don't necessarily have a campus, so all of our classrooms are, inside this campus. We are in the middle of town, so that means that the town and school get to interact quite a lot, and we have certain town times. So it means that being in town and being engulfed in like this kind of English countryside kind of environment is quite nice and quite casual, and we're allowed to have certain days where we're allowed to go out and we're allowed to go on weekends. So that's quite nice, and it's quite special.
Fantastic. Kush, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I think my favorite part of being a boarder would just be the amount of independence you receive that you would not if you were living with your parents, because over here you're living with like equals, you're living with your friends, and it's a whole like another experience. And indeed, as much as like the constructing what the day would be during your lessons and your study time and everything, but as soon as you get to like noon, when the school ends, and when you actually like over here, I would call it home life. Like when it starts, when it begins, it's so different because, I mean, besides your academics, there's so much to do, and it's just a whole variety. You can stay in house, you can just chill out. You could definitely go out into the summer term. I mean, I think it's something to celebrate about. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, and my personal favorite thing about boarding is just that just being around your friends and
it's a perfectly good thing to enjoy doing, and I can tell, you know, all three of you, that's a common thread. It's the people around you that have made your experience very special. We've got some great questions coming in, and I will lead to those at the end. Please, those of you who are watching and listening and enjoying this, do keep sending questions in. But one that might fit in right now, and it was touched upon then, was what do you do at weekends? And having worked in boarding houses, the importance of being busy, but the importance also of some downtime. Who would like to pick up on that one first? Any volunteer to go for that one? Yeah, thanks, Billy. Thank you.
I think, so we have, at Oakham, we have school on Saturdays. So, and I mean, I was quite surprised with that at first, and I was scared that I wouldn't have enough time, I mean, you know, to enjoy my weekend. But Saturday, I mean, we do have school, but in the afternoon we have sport, and that kind of makes it feel like a weekend. You also have the opportunity to go to town. And on Sunday, again, you can go to town. And what a lot of houses do is they prepare activities in-house, or they prepare socials with other houses. It's quite difficult because of COVID, obviously, but now, as you know, restrictions are easing, we're able to kind of interact with other houses a lot more. I think also what Oakham has, and I'm sure a lot of other boarding schools has, is we have leave out weekends, which means that I mean, English boarders can go home, we can go, international boarders can go stay with their guardians. I mean, you can stay at your friend's house. You also have the opportunity to stay at school, because we have I am in a full boarding house, so we have quite a few full boarders. So that means Oakham always gives you the opportunity to stay in school over the leave out weekend, in case you don't have anyone to go with. But there's always, I mean, one thing about boarding school is there's always something to do. Like,
what about the brilliant, and thank you, that's a super answer from either of the others. What about downtime? What about being able to escape and just be yourself? Tassilo.
Well, yes, obviously you're always constantly around people, but I think every school that I know of, or that before I came to Bryanston and I researched about, had in weekends, out weekends, and exeats. And that means that you have weekends where everyone has to stay in school, and everyone just stays there, and it's super fun because the school also puts on activities. And then you've got out weekends where people leave the school, and for example, we're quite far away from London, and so yeah, it's quite nice that people also stay in school on out weekends, but obviously you can also go to friends or somebody. Then regarding the downtime by itself, I think you can always find downtime even during the week when other people are there. It really depends on what type of person you are. If you constantly want to be around people, you can always go out and see people. And most people, or at least I know of, respect if you just say, sorry, can you just get out of my dorm, please, because I just want to go. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, spot on. Kush, anything to add to those great answers?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, I mean, if I just pick up on downtime, it's a lot similar to what Bryanston School said, that if you're not feeling comfortable, there's a lot of, if there's a lot of people in your room and you just want to be by yourself for a bit, they can definitely ask them to leave. Or there are so many other places you could be if you want to be by yourself. Like, you could just go out to the lawn, enjoy the sunshine, read a book. You could definitely go to the library. It sounds a bit boring, but then there are a number of places. If you don't want to be constricted in a room, you could definitely go out to the cafes and something. Yes, there's a lot of places you could go to be by yourselves. Yeah.
Okay, super stuff. Now, I'm going to miss out the next question and go to the last one. We've got so many good questions coming in from the people who are watching. I want to focus on those. So I'm going to ask each of you, just very briefly, please. I'm going to start with Illy about plans after school, just so we can have a context. University, world of work, what's going to happen?
Okay, so my plan is to go to university. I'd like to study international relations. And it was my IB subject that kind of helped me pick things that go into international relations, as well as, I mean, pick things that I just enjoy. So I do art as one of my IB subjects, and I don't necessarily want to study art, but it really just allowed me to, do something that I love. But yes, university is definitely the plan.
Fantastic. And do you know which one it'll be yet, or
No,
waiting on?
I'm not sure, but somewhere in Europe, and the university department here helps you quite a lot, not just with UK-based universities, but also they know quite a lot about international universities.
I was going to ask that, so thank you. That's brilliant. So advice about US universities, European. Kush.
Yeah, so my plan is definitely to go to university. I've already have some in mind. That's how I choose my A levels. Since it's different to IB, you kind of have to make up your mind of what you want to study in university, and according to that, you choose your range of subjects. So I'm planning on to go to King's or Exeter. I want to study economics and finance over there. So I'm just kind of preparing for that, studying for the exams. I have my AS level exams this year for maths. So yeah, so over here we obviously have a university department. They keep us up to date with the latest, US universities opportunities, UK universities opportunities. So we're constantly getting emails, being up to date of what's going on. If there's any internship you could do, apprenticeship before you go to university, just to build up your skills or if your interview.
That's great. Sounds pretty comprehensive. Thank you, Kush. Tassilo.
So my plan is to take a gap year, which consists of traveling and working for a year. But in that gap year, I want to take 3 months of a coding course. Just even though I really don't want to do that in the future, I just think it's quite helpful for the future and it's good basic knowledge nowadays. But then I do want to go to university and probably study business, not economics. And yeah, I'm sure the other schools as well had universities come to school and had like a universities fair, which again, with connections through a boarding school, you get to know lots of different universities that you by yourself could not find.
That's brilliant. And now we come to the bit which is going to be a bit of free form, just for 10 or so minutes. Questions, superb questions coming in. Here's one. Is the environment very competitive, or is it a balance? I mean, you can read that in lots of different ways. Would anybody like to kick off? Has it been very, very competitive in your school? Because they're all good academic schools. Or do you feel you've had a really, really good balance so far in your provision? I'm going to go, yeah, thank you, Illy.
I'd say, again, like it depends on what kind of a person you are. I'd say I'm quite a competitive person in both sports and academics. So, and when you're constantly around people, you do, if you want to feel the need to compete, but you have to remember that this is your home as well as your sports ground, as well as your school. So there is a level of chilledness around everything, because you need, like, it is also your home, and you don't constantly want to be in an environment where, you're always trying to impress people. So just, you're trying to impress yourself and everyone's there to support you. That's
a cracking answer. Kush.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. So in Beads, obviously, it's a boarding house. You're living with other people. You're constantly trying to improve yourself. But I would like mention that there is a decent level of competition over here. Even the entrance exams and everything, it's quite hard. But when you get in, and when you if you're working at a decent pace, like you're maintaining balance between your academics and your sports or other activities. So Beats also allows you to focus more on sports if you want to, but you have to be exceptionally good at it. So you can be in the first football team, the firsts, and you could have a less of academic time, and you can focus more on your health. But yeah, I would say the competition is pretty high over here.
That's great. Yeah,
in academic.
and rightly so. I think what it's all about is and what I'm sensing from all three of you is that your schools have got to know you as individuals and supported you as individuals. Tassilo, anything to add there?
I actually think Oakham School kind of brought it to the point there, because first of all, it does really depend on who you are as a person. And personally, I think competition to a certain extent is always good, as it always makes you reach for the better. But it depends on sports and academics. But I think in every boarding school in the UK, in the world, you will find competition if you want it. So yeah.
Brilliant. Super answers. Next one. This will be a bit of a yes or a no. Did your parents let you make the final decision on which school to go to? I'm going to go to Kush first on that one.
Yeah, ironically, I was considering to go to Oakham as well. It was on my list, but I chose Beats because I just kind of like saw the balance. I talked to the people over here, and it just kind of felt right. So yes, I was like highly included in the process of choosing my school, and I definitely did have the final say in that.
Tassilo.
So as I said at the start, I went through like a school agency, and that definitely, because there are so many boarding schools, you can't possibly know every single boarding school. So it's quite good for them to kind of see who you are and to which school you would fit best. And I know I can speak from experience. I looked through 4 different schools, and I think if you have the chance, definitely try and go to the school and see what the environment is like. Because for me, as soon as I came to Bryanston, I just knew, okay, the environment, the people, this is what I want, and it's so much in your gut feeling. And my mum thought the exact same thing. And so yes, obviously your parents, I think, should also have a say.
Well, that's great for you, in that your mother, who obviously going to be a decision maker, and you had the same feeling.
Yeah.
And the point you made about visiting the schools, certainly, you know, with our clients at the English education in pre-COVID times and post-COVID times, as things unfurl, school visits are brilliant, because it's only when you go in as a boy or a girl or as a parent and you see the way that the staff interact with staff and the staff interact with children and the children interact with children that you think, this is it. Because I'm sure, Tassilo, having done all your research, school websites look the same.
Yeah, the forms and everything, like every school has ECAs, every school has sports. It really depends on who you are as a person and where you think you feel which school you fit to best.
Brilliant. Illy.
Also, ironically, I was also looking at Bryanston. I think so I think boarding schools are very, very specific to yourself. So you need to see where you fit in. So my brother graduated from Bryanston, and to me, I wanted to go to the school my brother went to. But my parents made it very clear to me that you need to go to the school which you think you're going to do the best in, and that isn't always necessarily determined by your siblings. So for me, my parents had quite a big decision in which school I went to, because I think it's also important for your parents to feel like they're sending their child to the right place. And they need to feel, okay, I know my child and I know this is where my child would thrive.
Spot on. Brilliant answer. And now the stinker of a question, the really nasty one. And this will probably be our last question unless others come through. Do you think leaving your school in your home country for your boarding school has made you a better person and student? Really tough question, and I'm throwing it at you, and that might be tricky. Who would like to start? I'm going to start with Kush.
Yeah, I just like to say that I like to agree with that statement, that it definitely has. I've really developed as a person, just being by myself, yet being around the people like of my age. Definitely have become more mature regarding my academics, like my own personality. Just not that kid anymore who doesn't do his work on time. It's kind of a troubled child. But now, like beats, like the surroundings have changed me so much. I'm like, just makes you so focused on the things you need to be focused on for your future. So yes, I would agree that it has made me a better person.
Okay, Illy.
I think sometimes what students have like this kind of preconception that when you go to boarding school, you'll be happier, you'll get better grades. And that's kind of like the grass is greener on the other side kind of concept. And I don't think it necessarily makes you a better person, but I think it allows you to grow. So in terms of academics, in terms of yourself as a person, and that can make you a better person. But going to boarding school, and I'm sure we can all agree, it really just helps you grow. I think that's the main thing.
Brilliant. Tassilo.
Yeah, I also think I've definitely grown, and I've also, because I am in a very different environment to my environment in Germany, I've learned stuff and I've had discussions with people I normally wouldn't have. And especially in our day and age, I think that's quite important. And I think also it definitely prepared me better for university, because I think without boarding school and prep nights and all of that, I wouldn't have been able to actually work by myself, to be honest. Yeah, no, definitely.
It's great. Thank you. I'm going to check in one more because it's just come through. Apologies. And this may not have crossed your minds, but why UK boarding rather than USA? Were any of you looking at the USA at all? It's not a question then that we can answer. Is moving for the sixth form harder to make friends in such a short period of time? Of course, you can't answer that one. Illy.
I think obviously I wouldn't know how it would differ from arriving earlier, but I do think I haven't been, like, me coming in sixth form hasn't really changed, you know, how welcoming people are and how many friends I've made. And I also think sixth form is very often a year where they're expecting lots of new people to come, and people are willing to make new friends. People are willing to spend their IB or A levels years like meeting new people. So I don't think it affects how many people you meet and your friends.
Tassilo.
So I don't think either that it really has such a big impact on you if you are there earlier. And regarding the question before, I think there was a question about the induction week in Bryanston, just to fit that in as well for them to answer that. It was really helpful for me there because literally the first 2 days we had sport activities, and then at night we had a barbecue. And I was literally new, and then I was literally still very small, and then you had these huge rugby boys, and it was completely different, and so you kind of knew what was coming to you when you would then join, and then you got separated into IB and A levels, and kind of got to know your lessons, and kind of see some people saw, oh my god, I actually don't like IB that much, and changed to A levels, and vice versa. So yeah, no, definitely.
Fantastic. We've taken up, a good chunk of your time, you three, and on behalf of all of us at the English Education, but I know all of those who've joined from all parts of the world, a big thank you to Kush, to Tassilo, and to Illy, to wish you three all the very, very best of luck in the next few weeks in this changed last term at school. I'm sure you will all take these amazing experiences that you've described so brilliantly. I'm sure you'll take those through the rest of your lives, and that they will always be with you, as will your friends that you have made. They will be with you for the rest of your lives, because the relationships you make when at boarding school are second to none. To those of you who have joined us from all around the world, thank you very much. You will automatically be sent a recording of this. Please do share it with others. But it draws to a conclusion, and I'd just like to thank the staff at the 3 schools for making this happen. And we will turn our screens off now and wave bye-bye to the audience. Thank you so much, you 3. You've been absolutely brilliant. And yeah, well done. Thank you.
Thank you.